Aniara is a 2018 Swedish slash Danish slash UK science fiction movie co-production, and it is quite possibly, quite probably, the purest expression of cosmic horror I have ever seen. And right off the bat, let me say I was wrong about this movie. Now, my name is Christian Malte. I've been a Lovecraft fan since over 40 years. I've seen well over 1,000 science fiction movies, like almost 1,200 by this stage. And I actually did a video on what makes a story Lovecraftian a while back. I had mentioned Aniara at that time because I had heard of it, I had heard great things about it, but I hadn't seen it yet. And because it was set in the cosmos and because horrible things happened, I'll tell you the story in an instant. Well, I had seen that people had put it on cosmic horror lists, but I thought, surely that's wrong. I mean, just because it's in space and it's horrible doesn't make it cosmic horror. Even Alien, in my mind, is arguably not really cosmic horror. Again, if you check out the other video, I explain why in not too much detail, but I'll explain why. Now, having said that, I have now watched Aniara, and yeah. It's not only quintessential cosmic horror, but it's kind of the movie that really allowed me to fully understand like the core essence of what cosmic horror truly means. So we'll go over all that in the course of this video. But first, what is the movie and what's the story? It's based on a poem, actually, by a Nobel Prize winner, whose name, I think, Harry Martinson. And he actually killed himself shortly after winning the Nobel Prize for Literature. Partly, he won it partly because of Aniara, which tells the story of a spaceship. And this is after the Earth. It's still around, but people are fleeing the Earth because everybody's dying. There's been an unspecified catastrophe, or probably a series of catastrophes, but things have obviously gone very, very, very bad on good old planet Earth, and they are fleeing to Mars, a Mars colony. And humanity has set up a quite elaborate system of, shuttles using huge spaceships, very comfortable spaceships. Actually, they're like a mix between a shopping center and a high-end resort filled with gadgets, and there's a holodeck called Mima, which becomes important in the plot, and many wonderful things. And so you go on this very comfortable, huge spaceship, and the journey is supposed to take 2 weeks, and then the settlers go and to their new life on Mars. But one of these spaceships called Aniara, as it's just set off on this 2-week journey, there's an accident, like an explosion or something like that. Something goes wrong with the fuel reserve, essentially, and the ship is veered off course. And instead of going towards Mars, it goes to the depths of space. It's redirected to blackness of the darkest space, And at first, like, the captain is like, "No, don't worry, everybody. It's just, it will take us 6 months to a year to get to Mars, but we can redirect because there are, as soon as we find an asteroid with a high enough mass, there's asteroid X and asteroid Y, and we'll get there and we'll do a gravitational thingy like in Star Trek, and we'll be redirected on course." So yeah, obviously it's not perfect, but everything is peachy keen, which is not. That's not true. We soon find out that that's wishful thinking, and the weeks pass, the months pass, and eventually the years pass, and society begins to crumble in ever worsening ways, along with the psyche of everybody on board in varying ways. And we'll be mainly following one character, but it's a huge cast with many characters. But the main one is this lady who is in charge of that holodeck, that Mima semi-AI. and she's in a lesbian relationship with one of the officers, but the lesbian thing is just there. Like, it's not a big, they don't make a big deal out of it, but they do end up, having a child, and as soon as you see the child, you have to watch the movie. But the core thing is, I had seen a criticism online by like a big newspaper, I think, which said that nothing happens in this movie. It's just grim and things, things keep getting worse. And yeah, but that's kind of the point, you see. And that's that criticism really missed the point of the movie, which is what I'll be explaining now. So there are few movies as powerful, certainly in science fiction, that I have seen, certainly, few movies as powerful as this one. And one of the reasons is that, okay, first of all, it looks great. The special effects are very, very good. The sets are fantastic. The direction is excellent. There's some, shaky cam, handheld shaky camera stuff at the beginning and a few instances. And usually I really don't like that. But, and I didn't like it here either, but it's not, the whole movie is not like that. It's just a couple of sequences. And it's really brilliantly directed, actually. And I do mean brilliant, because one of the core qualities of the movie, which helps drive that message, that feeling of cosmic horror, is just how understated the movie is. So right off the bat, we know there's been a catastrophe on Earth, but we're never, as I said, we're not told what it is. What we do know is that there sure are a lot of horribly scarred people on board. People who seem to have had like radiation burns or like full body, second, third degree burns, stuff like that, like horribly, horribly burned, mutated people. And it's never mentioned. They have lines. There's some characters that are like that, some officers. And it's never addressed directly, but like many of the details of the movie, it's just there. And this is a movie that essentially, if you think in terms of like a syllogism, like a logic, this gives you A and B, and it lets you understand C by yourself. And this is a very, very powerful technique. The accident, that makes the ship veer off course, we kind of see it, we kind of feel it, but there's not a whole sequence with, engineers in the engine room looking at monitors as the situation is worsening, like a Titanic kind of situation. It kind of just happens, and we're not there when the accident happens. And the movie doesn't tell you right away just how bad things are, because we're kind of, again, seeing the movie mainly through the point of view of the woman who's in charge of the holodeck. Like, I say holodeck. In the movie, it's called Mima. This Mima AI thing is a huge, huge part of the story. Certainly, like the first third of the movie, it's a major component, but in many ways, it drives the fate of that AI and the repercussions that AI has on the spaceship is one of the driving narrative lines and themes in the entire story. And this is very effective. When we hear about it first, the Mima holodeck is just one of the many attractions in this huge, shopping center, a spaceship. And the main character, she loves her work because the AI is semi-sentient. It's pretty sentient, actually. It's sensitive, and you have to talk with it. Like, her job is mainly to deal with it like a very sensitive soul, I have to say, at the end of the day. And so she cares for this AI being, but nobody cares besides her. Like, the little kids are not impressed at all. And obviously that technology has been around for a long time. And so we see that at first because she's like, oh, come visit the Mima holodeck, and nobody cares. Like, they look at her with disdain, that there's a shiny new toy over there. That's a lot more exciting. But once the accident happens, and once the weeks give way to the months, people start relying on the meme more and more, and so a lot of things happen in that direction. And again, the movie will use that as this tool, like a narrative element of what happens to this society over the years. Because, okay, so I said it's cosmic horror, and it's cosmic horror without monsters, which is what makes it so powerful. And one of the ways this is illustrated is in this devolution of society, which is a theme we find very often in science fiction, like in post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear stories, like in Threads or Letters of a Dead Man, or like any post-nuclear story you can think of, basically. You have that idea both of grief over what's been lost, and of the despair and the desolation over what's collapsing before our eyes, etc., how difficult things are. And certainly we have all that in the movie. Stories like Galactica, for instance, like the second season of Galactica in particular, the reboot, you have elements of that same kind of idea of a spaceship, lost in space, and things are getting worse. And famously, I'm kind of spoiling the second season of Galactica, the 2000 TV show, if you haven't seen it, but eventually, for a while, they settle on a planet, and things don't go well. Let's just put it that way. And it's very interesting to compare both in terms of the cosmic horror theme, because you can see that the emotion is not the same. So, for instance, in Galactica, we're seeing moral decay, like collective moral decay. And we're seeing complicity, more or less tyrannical, fascistic, or despotic government is installed, and democracy is subverted, that kind of theme, But in the Galactic reboot, certainly it's extremely powerful. Like that's one of the best, TV stories I've seen, certainly in terms of science fiction. Very good, very smart, very well observed in terms of how a democracy collapses into tyranny, basically. There's a lot of very finely observed, comments in that TV show. But it's still taking like an ethical point of view, which is my point here. And the Galactica TV show is still telling us like this is horrible, and it is taking an ethical / moral point of view, essentially. It's not telling us this is just a phenomenon that happens and part of the suffering of the universe, the suffering that the universe provokes as an objective phenomenon that doesn't care about you, which is the core of cosmic horror, which is what we get in Aniara. So in Threads, like the post-apocalyptic story, it's completely like one of the most horrible movies I've ever seen, possibly the most horrible. It's really a grueling experience about a nuclear explosion that destroys England, and how society collapses over the decades as nuclear winter sets in, and institutions collapse, and nothing grows, and the whole thing, right? So Threads is horrible, and there are mutations, and because of the radiation, etc., etc. But yeah, so the movie Threads, it's about, there's still like as I said, a sense of grieving and loss, and there is still a sense that human suffering matters. So the post-nuclear stories are about how horrible it is that we have lost civilization, and look at all these things. Like it's a cautionary tale, obviously, like any post-nuclear story, but the way the Aniara story is told over many years, as it turns out, is there's none of that. So as in all those movies I've just mentioned, society collapses, and there's a tyrannical government that's set in place, and there are orgies and death cults, if you like. Certainly like a new agey religion gets formed, and all these things, like the politics of a post-nuclear society, are kind of reflected in this movie. But The core message of the movie is that no matter our efforts, nothing matters. That's the thing. And the brilliant part of it is that it tells us that um, yeah, nothing matters, but it sure hurts a lot. So that's the experience of watching that movie. And I don't believe that in real life, but I don't know about you, but I felt it, right? Like, those long dark nights, or those sad afternoons or whatever, like you when you feel that you have all this pain and existential dread, and everything is collapsing and everybody's going insane, and no matter what you do, nothing works, or it seems to work for a while, but it eventually collapses and everything is for naught, and all these things. And that's that sense of deep, deep, deep despair mixed with uh, I'm suffering horribly at the deepest levels of my being, and it does not matter. Nobody cares. There's no God coming to save me. This has no meaning. It's just pure suffering. And if only it mattered, you see. So, but that's the thing. So the core cosmic horror element, and this is what the movie ultimately illustrates, is that the cosmic horror ethos, like the feeling, like the what makes it cosmic horror, is precisely that it's the deepest levels of horror and suffering without any redeeming, salvatory value. And I said there are no monsters, and there are none. You might be tempted to say, but surely the humans are the real monsters of this story. And that's another part of what makes it so brilliant and so understated, because, yeah, many humans do horrible, monstrous, truly monstrous things. I won't spoil anything again, but like the captain, he's not up to the job. Okay, so he's pretty bad, but he's bad in a politician way, in a not up to the job way, and he's always trying to make the people keep their morale up, right? And so, but he ends up lying to people and putting in place like this tyrannical society. But even that the way it's handled is very smart, because it's all for, I mean, everything is for naught. That's kind of the point. And I said this is like the monster theme. Like, he's horrible, and he's lying, and he's making all these hollow speeches, which we again can very easily recognize in our real lives. But yeah, he's being monstrous in a way, but he's not a monster. Like, none of them are. The people behave in very recognizably human ways, and because there are so many characters, what the movie does is kind of show us the whole spectrum of reactions. So the pettiness of like the church lady, or something like the equivalent of the space church lady, if you like. There's that, the blaming, it's her fault, it's his fault, that whole thing. The vicissitudes of office life, all of it, like every form of shallow thinking, of denial, of, okay, I'll drink myself to death, I just don't care, or I'll try to be a good person. All these reactions. I mean, that the movie shows us this expressed through its myriad characters. And when people behave monstrously, they do so in ways that we've all seen. And sometimes it's not unlikely that we've done. If you live long enough, eventually you do stuff that you're not always proud of. It's just part of being human. And so it's not even a Lord of the Flies sort of situation. Like Lord of the Flies, very famous British novel, was filmed a few times. And it's a very common theme, and certainly like British science fiction. You have that in the Medusa Touch also. It's a very frequent theme, which is that man is a wolf to man, like the Thomas Hobbes mentality. Like everybody is horrible, and we have to have strict rules to govern us because we're so horrible, and like the whole, it's almost like capitalist ethos, but the capitalist in that it's all competition and we're all stabbing each other, and that's why we're happy. And we have all these laws and the police and these institutions and these very shrewd like politicians and businessmen and like shark-like people. But it's good that we're governed by horrible people because it keeps us in check, because we're all monsters at heart. That kind of theme, Lord of the Flies, like schoolboys get stuck on an island and they revert to barbarism, and that's the story. And but there's none of that here in a story like Lord of the Flies, which is almost like an original sin kind of narrative. The idea is that people are just bad because they're like spiritually, essentially, ontologically, if you like, bad. It's like a Lord of the Rings, which is obviously fantastic, which is a completely other kind of story. But the narrative of Lord of the Rings, especially if you read like the history of Middle Earth or the Silmarillion, which is fantastic. The whole idea of Lord of the Rings is that things are great for a while, and then they collapse, and they collapse because Morgoth, who is the evil god, evil lord, has corrupted the earth, or Middle Earth, which is Morgoth's ring, right? And so everything is corrupted because it's original sin, and we need a redemption, like a Christ figure, essentially, which, whatever, Tolkien. But again, there's none of that here, and which is what makes it in cosmic horror. The awfulness is not even redempted, if you like. It's not even saved by our own indignation. It's just there. It's just something horrible happens and you suffer, and 5 years later, 10 years later, it just doesn't matter because things are just that much worse, and that suffering is just like, dust in the wind, if you like to quote the Bible in that song, right? It really, 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 really packs a punch, like packs a wallop. And that's because of that accumulation of that understated horror, which is always there, which is showing you all these things, and which gives you a deep sense of doom and foreboding, because you know where the story is going. And like all great, if you like, tragedies, there's a sense of inevitability. Inevitability? Things are inevitable, right? So it can't be avoided. But in the tragedy, which comes from the Greeks, right, there's a spiritual meaning. Again, there's a moral lesson, but there's no moral lesson here. It's just we feel it. We feel how horrible it is, and sometimes there are moments of joy, and sometimes there are moments of virtuous, actions, and kids running and create beauty. All these things are there, and keep a stiff upper lip and whatever. Like, there are good things happening, but ultimately, good, bad, it, if the universe decides to send you like a supernova and everything you love is destroyed, and it takes 30 years for your whole civilization to die and just see it collapse, well, that's just a phenomenon. Like gravity is a phenomenon, and like a solar flare happened and you died and you felt horror, and then it's cosmos and it doesn't matter. So it's that combination of the deep feeling and the artistry and the intelligence of the story, and how well observed it is, and all these qualities, and the fact that it, again, as I said, it looks great, that truly makes this movie a masterpiece of modern science fiction, and certainly of cosmic horror. And as I said, I think the purest quintessential expression of cosmic horror, both as a kind of philosophical idea, but more crucially as a poetic expression of a deep, deep, deep feeling, which might be an illusion, might not be true, but it certainly feels real when you feel it, right? So yeah, let us not despair. And I don't believe, even though things can look pretty bad and pretty terrible, I do think it's important to stay hopeful, and as in the movie, to act to the best of our abilities. But in the movie, there's a lot of denial also, and self-serving narratives, and there's certainly plenty of that going around these days, in no matter the problem you can imagine. And it might be said that movies like that, which make us truly feel that feeling, often which we're kind of avoiding, of just how dire things feel. Well, perhaps movies like this, the cosmic horror movie, help us to address that feeling that our body is feeling because of the immensity of the drama and the tragedy and so forth. So in that sense, yeah, it's certainly it's a wonderful, great piece of art, and do check it out. And if you're curious to know why I said at the time it wasn't cosmic horror, and also obviously what makes a story Lovecraftian, which was a part of it, well, you'll find it right here, a video I did a while ago. So check it out. See you soon. Life is good. Life is good. So keep watching the skies. Take care.